podcast on US India space collaboration, prospect, and challenges. It is my pleasure to welcome our guest today, Professor Rajaram Nagappa. Professor Nagappa has specialized in aerospace propulsion and has worked extensively in the design and development of solid propellant rockets. He has served in the Vikram Sarabhai Space Centre, ISRO, and as its associate director, and played a leading role in development of solid propellant rocket systems for ISRO's launch vehicles. On retirement from ISRO, Professor Nagappa joined Anna University, Chennai as Pandalai Memorial ARNDB Chair Professor and made significant contributions towards enriching the research and development profile of the aerospace engineering department. These included development of ANOSAT, the first small satellite project in an India university with support from ISRO, establishment of a high-temperature material characterization laboratory, and aging studies of composite propellants. In 2002, Professor Nagappa was offered the Lady Davis Visiting Professorship with the Faculty of Aerospace Engineering at the Technion, the Israel Institute of Technology, Haifa. Since February 2007, he's been with the International Strategic and Security Studies program at the National Institute of Advanced Studies, Bengaluru. He has worked on a number of contemporary topics, including ballistic and crucial missile capabilities in our neighborhood, hypersonic weapon systems, weaponization of space, and space security. He has authored a book, Evolution of Solid Propellant Rockets in India. He is the recipient of awards of the Astronautical Society of India, DRDO Agni Award for Self-Reliance, Certificate of Appreciation from the International Astronautical Federation, and DRDO Academic Excellence Award. It is my greatest pleasure and honor to welcome you, sir, to our podcast series. Welcome to Christ University, sir. Sir, I will just hop on to the first question. When it comes to India-US space collaboration, what do you think it currently looks like? And why do you think space application is such a critical area for US-India collaboration at the moment?
First, thank you, Kriti, and for having me here. It's a pleasure to not only speak to you and speak on a subject of great interest to me, which I have brought out. Your first question as to why is Indo-US space cooperation an essential element? If I look back at the history of it, Indian space venture itself started on an international cooperation basis where US played a lead role. Going back to 1963, when the India launched the first sounding rocket from India, that sounding rocket was actually supplied by the US, this one. It's called the Nike Apache 2 this one. And the Tumba equatorial rocket launching station itself started on a scientific experiment of what we call the International Geophysical Year. So there was an interest all around. And among other countries, US played a very, very lead role in giving the momentum to the Indian space effort. Now, this Nike Apache was there. There was another rocket called Judy Dart, which was also supplied by the US NASA as such. And Indian scientists of that variety at that time, which included Dr. Kalam, Mr. Arvamudan, a number of other people, they were trained in NASA facilities in the preparation of sounding rockets and launching. And these were essentially scientific experiments which were carried out. So it started from there, and from there I think it's gone on at various levels. There have been mostly ups, some downs in between, okay? And of late it's now sort of picking up momentum. Maybe after the India-US civil nuclear deal, I think other areas of cooperation between India and US have opened up to a larger extent. And in this, between Prime Minister Modi and President Biden, was a discussion on what they call the ICET, Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies, where space was sidelined as an important element. There were other points of discussion, but space specifically was this one. And element in the ICET is not just the cooperation as such, it's cooperation. It is the regulatory aspects of it, understanding the rules, as well as this one. So in space specifically came for a major mention, and among the items that were mentioned in this space was strengthening cooperation beyond human spaceflight. India, as you know, is emerging now on practicing its own human spaceflight mission it's taking up, the Gaganyaan as we call it. And US has very clearly offered, for example, training an Indian astronaut to go on a 2-week mission to the International Space Station. So it's sort of easy. And then, therefore, when we start on our own Gaganyaan mission subsequently, the mission supposed to start off sometime this year. There'll be 2 or 3 unmanned, uncrewed flights. If I say unmanned is no longer very fashionable. It's uncrewed flights. Then after that, the Indian crew will fly on the Indian Gaganyaan mission. So this preliminary step of an Indian astronaut being trained, spending time on the International Space Station and most probably in the American module, is going to give us a startup on that in terms of how does the space environment for longer habitation looks like, and that we should be able to adapt in our own this one. Other areas are the identifying innovative approaches for commercial sectors of the two countries. The commercial sector is also picking up in a major way. There are a number of startups in India, space startups, again, mostly from Bangalore, many from Bangalore, I should say, are playing a lead role. So there's this one. And therefore, strengthening the bilateral commercial space partnership is automatically it comes in. So this sort of lays the foundation for one of this, and it depends on us now. Therefore, how do we act on this initiative that is available and take it further?
So, you rightly said, I think it depends on both the countries how they can take it forward. So, sir, that leads to the second question, that what are some of the most exciting opportunities that both the countries have today in the space cooperation sector?
There's something called, if you take the overall space market, it's claimed to be about 400 billion, and by the end of the decade it's likely to go up to about 600 billion. That's the extent of space market. India holds a very, very tiny share today, approximately about 2% of the global space economy. And the Indian space wants, obviously, to increase this, maybe mark it up to about 10%. This is what Chairman ISRO, for example, has indicated. There should be a target figure by the end of the decade. Increase the Indian space contribution to the global economy from 2% to 10%. And the small scale sector as well as the government sector have a major role to play and enhance towards this enhancement. Now, if you take the survey that's available from well-known space agencies, space analysis agencies, the small satellite is going to be a huge market in the coming years. The numbers that have been projected is of the order of 3,000 or 4,000 type of small satellites would be required. If I de-link it also from the mega constellations like what SpaceX is currently doing in terms of Starlink, what the Chinese have in mind, or what the Jeff Bezos, this one also. So number of mega constellations. Even if I remove all that from reckoning, the small satellite market for applications as well as this one has increased in very large trend. And this is one area where I find some Indian startups are already into it. They can have this one. And if they now tie up with US commercial sector of the space and look at our pluses and where we can contribute, I think there's a good market. To start with, at least, that will be a good initiative. If you look at our own global navigation in Indian IRNS, regional what you call the security systems which you have now started up, the equivalent to GPS Our navigation system called Navik, navigation using Indian constellation, right now is providing slightly regional support of certain accuracy. And now if one band of that is sort of interoperable with GPS, the overall scheme of things therefore increases what's available and all that. And as India perhaps adds more to the satellite constellation and all that, so both on this civil sector itself, much more enhancement is possible. The support equipment that is required, so manufacturing, that also is one. So if you take the global space economy, launch vehicles play one role, satellite systems play another role, but bigger comes in the space applications. So there I think startups have some capability, but I think this is where they can multiply further with cooperation in the US. What is the type of data that's required? Immense data, big data. How do we are good at it as it is. So we can capitalize on this in terms of data, interpretation, analysis of the satellite imagery that comes in, both for societal applications as well as for security applications. Okay, immense amount of data is there. How do you fuse it? How do you give it in a ready-to-use form? And the government of India also has taken a very progressive step. Many of the imageries of the order of 50 centimeter type of resolution, they have said freely make it available. Because it will take some time for them to organize and release this. But plenty of data is available for assessment, analysis, and prediction. Whether you want to plan a city better, the utilities in a city better, satellite imagery provides the easiest and the best type of this one. There's one example, but there are so many hosts of this one. So agriculture related this one, plenty of applications are available, some more can be enhanced. And as we head into this, these are areas where we can cooperate further.
So I think that's a very positive scenario of what both the countries can do and how exciting opportunities are already there and what can be built upon. So you spoke about the startups. So what role do private space players like SpaceX and ISRO's commercial arm, NISL, uh, and startups play in enhancing this cooperation?
One thing India did, if I go back, ISRO was good at producing technology. End-to-end mission they could plan. They could conceive of a mission, what else is required, whether it's a launch vehicle or satellite application, interpretation. So launch it, get the data, analyze the data and use it. But in the process, what we overlooked is capacity building. Okay, so if you want to repeat this, and in terms of the number of launches, number of satellites you can make, number of this one, I think that capacity was not built in. And this is where the reorganization of the space, which happened in the last 3 years back, where the commercial space structure has been given a good prominence. So ISRO is going to concentrate more on research and development of new things. And what is already developed and produced, they are going to send it off to the industry. So the New Space India is Limited is one which really takes all the developed aspects of it and the production aspects they are going to look at. And in turn, they can farm out, because again, I'm talking about capacity requirements. If you want a dozen satellites to be built, a dozen this one, in a shorter time frame, you need to depend a lot on the industry as such. Because everything is now should not be done in-house. Go to the industry if you can do it. So some startups, some already established ones, for example, in Bangalore itself, Anand Technologies and a few others are already into it in terms of satellite integration and all that. And another thing progressive that has come out is use the test facilities already established by ISRO to come and this one. So you don't need to establish test facilities on your own. Use available facilities. There's a small perhaps fee to be paid because Any facility, if you operate, you spend money. So some fees to be, that's very easily or maybe very concessional terms that is available, but facility you don't have to set up, it's available. Services are made available to you. So it's already a leaping stone for the industry. So they need to make the infrastructure, they need to make the satellite or the satellite payload in numbers. Okay. As I said, therefore, the New Space India Limited is going to look at the bigger launch vehicles. PSLV production is required, they are going to look at it. GSLV production is required, they are going to look at it. They look at it. ISRO is not going to spend time on that system. Same with certain class of satellites. If there is a repeat required, NSIL can do it. Small scale industries also come into the picture in the same way, in that way. And as I said, there's a market for small satellites, huge market. And to cater to this, ISRO has also made a small satellite launch vehicle. So up to about 500 kg independent, you don't have to depend on the large satellites. So this infrastructure, if I may say so, or the total capability of launch vehicle and all that is now correctly available in the commercial sector, which is fairly large, and people need to now dirty their hands, burn their fingers a little bit, because everything is not hunky-dory, everything will become perfectly all right in the very first time. Minor obstacles will come and should know how to solve it.
So, sir, I wanted to ask you, when it comes to India-US collaboration in any sector, and right now since we're talking about the space sector, do you think China is an issue at all, or is it something that's a country from whom we can learn, or how is the China angle fitted when it comes to the India-US collaboration in the space sector?
Interesting question. China has, the US applies its export control rules to every country, even their NATO allies or European allies, friends and all that, the rules are the same. So it's applied everywhere. It was applied to China too. But China has made much more rapid advances in practically every element of technology. In space technology also, their advances have been very much further. In fact, before the Starlink project started up, and before Musk started launching Starlink satellites in such a series and succession, the number of satellites flown per year, the Chinese led the field. The Americans sometimes were a second, or American and Chinese were about the same. So they had that type of capacity as well as technology revolution they'd already achieved. So therefore, the China angle vis-a-vis India, it does not really fit in very much. Chinese have advanced their space capability very much. They've already done on the Chandrayaan equivalent missions. If you take the Chang'e missions, which is their lunar missions, they have landed on the far side of the moon, one of the first few countries to do so. They have managed to be in communication with the satellite on the far side of the moon, through another relay satellite which they placed in orbit. Very imaginatively they've done. And on the forthcoming Chang'e 4 mission, from the far side they're going to extract samples and then bring it back. Okay, we are also thinking of Chandrayaan mission. We've already flown, we've landed once. Maybe in our future missions we'll think of this one, but then already the lead of about 10 to 15 years the Chinese have over us. And some of these capabilities, especially the lunar ones, or they are on Tiangong station, the equivalent of the space station, they are progressing in their own fashion. And they have managed in terms of manufacturing and sourcing their requirements from sources which are not governed by the American export rules, export control rules. Either they are self-sufficient in that, or they've found other sources where they don't have to depend on this type of, this does not stop in that, this one. So they are far ahead, as I said. They have achieved many of their goals, and their aspirations, if you take a look at their space, this one, including habitation, permanent habitation on the moon and all that, is already far thinking. India's also got similar ambitions. We are planning a crewed mission, Gaganyaan, a human spaceflight mission. There's a directorate, there's people working on it. There, as I mentioned earlier, 2 or 3 uncrewed flights followed by a crewed flight is planned very much in the reckoning. Towards that, astronauts are being trained. One astronaut's in the US under training by NASA. We'll be on a NASA mission to the International Space Station, so there'll be lessons learned from that. And if you take other elements, nothing you can really say that India and China or US, they're not really competing. This one, each one has have their own space vision, space missions to meet that vision, and they're not really in any way interfering with each other as of now. Whether there'll be issues, complications and things like that in the future, one has to see. There will be issues because the space is getting crowded. We'll have to see how exactly we overcome that.
Thank you, sir. So I feel that question has been answered perfectly by you, because that is something that most of the people, when they are talking about India space collaboration, they want to know about what the China angle really is. So, sir, to conclude, I would just like to ask you, what do you think are the challenges faced by both the countries when it comes to India-US space collaboration?
Challenges are essentially one is the policy, this one. Second thing is the difference in the technology. The US is an accomplished space power. Their technology status everywhere wherever you take is far superior to us. We are still in the learn and catch up phase in many areas. Okay. So now, but India is catching up fast. And if I look at not just as the requirement from civil space, where we've already done this one. So now both of us have shared interests in that. Climate change is going to affect everyone. So there's already a collaborative experiment which is likely to be launched this year, what they call the NISAR project. It's a NASA ISRO synthetic aperture radar project, which is going to look at the rock formation structure, the ice formation structure, on remote sensing. This is radar remote sensing in different bands. India has a payload, they have a payload. So with this, you're going to map the Earth's crust completely, and it will give you important inputs for studying further how exactly these minor changes of this keep happening. And therefore, you could perhaps relate it to a much more global warming onwards. You will be able to relate it in various fashions. So there are, on the scientific side, on this side. On the defense side, if you look at, the Indo-Pacific is a hot topic for discussion and also for contention. So this is shared this time in terms of maritime security. Okay, in this region where India has quite a lot of capability and a positive role to play, the US also has a major role and interest. So India on one side, individually India and US on one side, India and US through Quad on the other side. There are a lot of shared interests, and many of these maritime security related to this one are space derived. They are aircraft derived, aerospace derived, but quite a lot of them are dependent on the space, this one. And there are areas of cooperation we can really bring in much more intensively, I can say. How do we go about it? Therefore, our private sector, commercial sector, which is now getting in, they should not look at only the Indian space program. They should look at internationally of this interest in this sector. So where they can chip in, they already have some capabilities. They have some of them like as I said, Anand Technologies or Pixel or Data Sciences one. There are a number of startups. Okay, and slightly bigger houses like Tatas and Mahindras who are also into aerospace. For them to look at this and say, all right, these are areas where there's a requirement, there's a positive capability in the US side. I have delta capability, incremental capability in this sense. How do I collaborate with them? The technology, the analysis capability, the data fusion capability, and the technical manpower available capability. How do we use this positive, this one, with the American technology, this one, to complement each other? I think this is doable, and there is a good scope and future in this.
Thank you so much, sir. I think on that positive note, I would like to thank you. It was my greatest pleasure to have you at Christ University for our podcast series. And thank you so much for discussing such an exciting topic with us and sharing all your insights. So thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for asking intelligent questions, and hopefully I have given good answers. No, but there is scope, and I think we should build on it. Thank you very much.